On to the NFL draft. Now that we have all the free agent news out of the way, we have the trades out of the way. Now we're going to focus on the fantasy football aspect of the NFL draft. Now, everyone that has a brain that is not bored at home making a what-if mock draft has Joe Burrow going number 1 to the Bengals.
What if? No, I'm just kidding.
That's going to happen. If you see a mock draft that has Joe Burrow going anywhere other than Cincinnati at number 1, the creator of that mock draft is bored.
I think number 2 the same can be said for number 2. I think it's
Chase
easy.
Young.
Yeah, I think the first 2 picks are really, 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 really easy to predict. And honestly, if anything happens outside of that, you can't blame anybody for not knowing that because it's ridiculous to draft anyone but those 2 in the first 2 picks.
Can Joe Burrow be a top 12 quarterback in 2020?
No.
Explain.
Bengals.
They have a lot of weapons.
Paul?
I'm out on him being top 12. I mean, I guess best case scenario, AJ Green's in there and healthy for 16 games. Eifert's when's the last time?
I think Eifert's gone.
Is he gone?
I think he signed with
I would hope-
Jacksonville or somewhere. But
he-
Eifert
He
doesn't
needs
matter.
to stop playing football.
He plays like 6 games a year, it feels like.
And his injuries are
But
never just ones where
AJ
you don't notice them. We're
AJ
talking
Green-
bones and stuff.
AJ Green, Tyler Boyd, John Ross, and I am a big fan of what Joe Mixon is going to do this year.
I'm done with Joe Mixon. We've had this conversation. Okay, I will say this. Tyler Boyd is my boy, a.k.a. my Boyd. But John Ross, still, we got 3 good games out of him. You know my rules of threes. You need more than 3 games of film to be effectively scouted and defended. So John Ross, not even in the conversation. AJ Green hasn't had a healthy season since, when did Tupac die?
Is he dead?
It was around there.
I'm not buying any stock in AJ Green this year. I'm sure that his price is going to be very discounted. We're in redraft. By the time the rankings come out, I'm going to think about it because I was buying him last year when his stock was 9th and 10th round. I would buy that stock at that price.
What about now, though? What's the cutoff round?
I don't know. I have to see. But you do have, in Cincinnati's offense, they're going to have a brand new quarterback who has all the talent to start day 1.
Andy Dalton wasn't bad. That's all I'm
He
saying.
wasn't bad, and he had some solid games down the stretch against bad teams. And we're going to have Joe Burrow now quarterbacking the Bengals. Whether AJ Green's there or not, Tyler Boyd is going to do his thing. Joe Mixon is going to do his thing, and to upgrade both Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon, they get their first-round lineman pick from last year. So they gain a first-round tackle that got hurt before the season even started last year. So now they're going to be protected. They're going to run block better. And I can see a big season from Joe Mixon just because the production out of the quarterback position is going to be so much better, whether Joe Burrow is a top 12 fantasy quarterback or not. Either way, he's going to be better than what Cincinnati had last year. And if you have better quarterback production, you're going to have better weapon production all around. So I think with more scoring opportunities, Joe Mixon is a serious threat for next season.
I think Joe Mixon's probably the biggest beneficiary as of right now.
I'm going to set this one out because I have my opinions. I have many reasons to agree based on analytics and based on facts. Paul dropped his phone, everyone. So based on, all the things that Christian just said and all the things that we know about Joe Mixon, yes, of course, yes, it seems like he would be great. But I thought that last year,
Joe Mixon produced down the stretch last year.
Oh, get off of me. You kidding me? He was such a bust of a pick for where I took him.
Where'd you take him? Top 5?
No, not top 5. I mean, first round. No, second round. He was the second round. But
despite the slow start that Joe Mixon had last year, he still finished as RB11.
But he's
an RB1 with the slow start. Now imagine that the quarterback situation is stable all year. More scoring opportunities, more yards to be had in that offense.
Too many what ifs, in my opinion. But also, a slow start can cost you, as it did for me, an entire season. because
You know who rode him to a fantasy title in our league? This guy.
see, this is why I don't like recording with him. You always got to bring up, personal stuff, making me feel bad. I don't like this.
Now, after the first 2 picks, which we assume are a lock, then we get to the Lions, which I'm considering on the clock right now. And the question for me isn't who they pick, but it's who they trade with. And the question that follows who they trade with is it the Dolphins or is it the Chargers, and which one do they pick? In Corner's latest mock draft that I released on Monday, I had the Chargers trading up to number 3 and taking Justin Herbert.
And you are not the only person that I have seen with that projection, and it makes sense. I mean, the needs that the Lions have, they are plenty, but they are not worth pick number 3, I would believe.
Well, they can trade down to spot 5 or 6 and still get the guy that I consider their guy.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I think this trade, and again, kind of going off of like, we already know the number 1 pick. We already know the number 2 pick. I'm pretty sure, like, if you could ever guarantee a trade, I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of them where they don't need anybody at that 3rd spot. And you bet your ass that the Chargers or the Dolphins, like Christian mentioned, are going to fight tooth and nail to get that pick.
And if the Lions can sit there and say, oh, you want your quarterback? We're going to want your first rounder next year. And we can drop down 2 spots or 3 spots and still get our guy. That is a no-brainer.
And with with not only a rookie quarterback, but a rookie quarterback that's not named Joe Burrow, you're not looking at a promising season. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be a wash and they're going to suck, but I mean, probability and past years say that if you get that first round pick for next year, you're probably going to have a top 5 pick the following year.
So
it's a solid move.
First question for both of you. Which team do you think trades up to number 3?
I want to say the Chargers, but they're pretty dumb. So I think the Dolphins beat them to the punch.
The Dolphins have a lot of draft capital.
Exactly.
They have a lot of pieces that they can move. What about you, Paul?
It's just weird for me because I feel like none of the quarterbacks available are worthy of a top 5 or even top 10 pick. So I feel like things are so murky when you get to 3.
I'm telling you though, it's you know what it is? It's the age-old quarterback stretch.
Mm-hmm. That's what it's going to be. It's what it's going to be.
Because it happens every year, and usually the Browns are the kings of the quarterback stretch.
So, with that team trading up to 3, who do you have them taking? Is it Herbert or is it Tua?
So, if it's me as the GM, I'm staying as far away from Tua as I can.
Okay.
But since, like I said, I mean, both teams are pretty historically known for bonehead moves. I'm thinking that the value, like, it's a coin flip, but I'm thinking that Miami takes Tua, but for some reason I feel like the Chargers take Oregon's Herbert. Yeah.
What about you, Paul?
I feel like Herbert is the pick there, especially the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers are in a position where you don't have to start him right away. You can use Tyrod as a bridge if you have to.
Well, with
part 2,
with Fitzmagic still in Miami, both teams have that luxury, so to say.
Veteran leader that will groom him.
And Miami can start Fitzpatrick, and their fantasy assets are still going to be okay. We saw that last year with Parker, where Parker exploded when Fitzpatrick took over.
Remember Josh Rosen?
Who?
Is he still there?
Josh Rosen is a key member of my worst football take of all time. And
You thought he was good.
I'll say it publicly for all of our listeners. When that draft happened, I had Rosen as my top quarterback.
It's insane.
It was my worst football take of all time. And I mean, I'll wear it. It happens. Everyone gets one wrong.
Hey,
but
this is a perfect example of Christian goes with numbers, analytics. I go with my gut. And when Christian told me that he wanted, or he thought Rosen was the number 1 quarterback in that draft, I was like, look at him, and then tell me that. And he was like, but the numbers.
well,
I'm like,
no,
no,
I didn't even say
gut
anything about
test.
numbers. But everyone said that his skill set and attitude matched Aaron Rodgers. And the reason he fell in the draft was because everyone's like, he's too cocky. He's not going to match well in the locker room.
Boom.
And I'm like, well, Aaron Rodgers doesn't mesh well in his locker room. Aaron Rodgers is considered a complete asshole. There's a lot of his not his family, not even his fans, his
He
family.
doesn't talk to his family.
He doesn't
His
mesh well with his
family,
own family.
He doesn't like his family. So when people say he's not going to mesh well places, if you can throw the ball, you're going to mesh well. Get someone the ball. That's all you need to do. But he just didn't develop. Now I don't know if that's because Arizona was a shit show when they took him.
Well, he's only what year? He's going to be year 3.
Year 3 coming into.
I mean,
I mean,
how
2
long?
years
How
and
long
2
did it
teams.
take for us to see Aaron Rodgers as a starting quarterback?
But he
I
sat
mean,
behind
Just saying.
one of the goats.
Okay, so is Matt Rosen right now.
Who's Matt Rosen?
Josh Rosen.
Matt Rosen. Who's Matt Rosen?
There isn't a Matt
Oh, I used to
Rosen.
work with a guy named Matt Rosen.
Cool.
Yeah. So is Josh Rosen right now.
Where's he in your mock?
No, Josh Rosen is sitting behind one of the greatest in Fitzmagic, so I think it's pretty much the same thing.
So even with Rosen in Miami, I still have Tua going to the Dolphins, pretty much ending any relevant portion of Rosen's career. Now, if Tua checks out, they end up getting him in camp, he starts taking reps, he's a dual threat guy.
With bad legs.
He's got a bad hip now, but from all reports, they're saying that his recovery is ahead of schedule. He's had one major injury. It was a major injury, but he's had one major injury. If
I'm out.
he is a starter in fantasy football and he's a dual threat guy, we emphasize dual threat quarterbacks all the time because you want that rushing production. Where do you think he finishes next year between 1 and 32 quarterbacks?
Next
in
year?
fantasy points, assuming he is the starter.
Assuming he's healthy.
From
For
the
16 games?
from the let's say that they draft Tua and he sits behind Fitzmagic for a certain number of games. But let's say that after that point, let's say he starts week 8 or he starts week 6. From the time that Tua gets the reins of the Miami offense, where does he rank from that week on in fantasy football?
Middle of the road or worse.
Yeah. I think on the higher side of worse, personally. Like, I mean, he's got a lot of knocks against him in terms of technique. His footwork, I've heard, is a knock. His pocket presence, feeling pressure, and things like that. Those are all things against him that he's going to have to learn when he's, drafted into the NFL on a team, learning things like that. So
I think it is going to hurt
just-
him that teams aren't able to do these rookie camps. They're not able
Yes.
to do these workouts.
That's a
They're-
huge
That's
knock.
going to be a big knock on any rookie quarterback coming into this class. I think Joe Burrow is the only one that's going to come in and start day one.
I feel like he's already practicing with the Bengals.
He might as well be. With 6 feet distance, of course.
Right. I mean, hey, you're a quarterback. I don't know any passes that are less than 6 feet.
So throw in Tristan Wirfs into the Giants at pick number 4. That rounds out our top 5.
Saquon's stock way up.
If you give, that helps. That obviously helps the Daniel Jones that they drafted last year. That's going to help their running game. Saquon's stock is high as it is. I don't think it's going to really impact it, but it's going to help him having an extra blocker there. A lot of people are saying Wirfs isn't a outside lineman in the NFL.
I saw that. They said he's going to be a guard.
Yeah, someone tweeted at corner saying that Tristan Wirfs is going to be a guard, and I'm not buying that for a second. So,
You don't get drafted that high as a tackle to then be changed to guard.
so in corners
Unless
drafts,
you're, what's his name, Irving?
Cam Irving.
Cam Irving, because that did happen.
Well, he worked for the Chiefs, so there's that.
He's a
got
backup.
He's got a ring.
He does have a ring.
So does Mitchell Schwartz.
Yep.
All right, moving on.
Moving on.
So at 6, I have Detroit taking Okuda, who they would have taken at 3 if I wasn't allowed to mock any trades. Then I have Derek Brown going to the Panthers. I have Jedrick Wills going to the Cardinals. Isaiah Simmons going to the Jags. The Browns trading out from pick 10. And I have Atlanta trading up to get C.J. Henderson. Now, if the Browns go ahead and take an O-lineman, as I have them doing at 16 anyway, stock up for Baker because their O-line was a complete mess last year.
Yeah.
Stock up for Chubb. And then we get into the Jets, who a lot of people have taking Jerry Jeudy. I have taking Mekhi Becton. I don't think that weed test is going to be that big of a deal.
Oh, I
Because
think
that was
Becton
my
might
next
even go
question.
higher.
Because
Get
after 60, yeah, I see what you did there.
Well,
After
no,
60
seriously.
days, he completely gets taken out of the
Protocol.
Yeah, he completely gets taken out of that. So I don't think this is going to be a big deal at all. It's not a Josh Gordon situation. Who was it who took the? It was the Dolphins, I believe.
Tunsil.
Laramie Tunsil, when he was
the
wearing
the mask.
the bong mask, and he still got taken
And
in the
now he's a
top
Pro
half of the
Bowler.
first round. And he's a Pro Bowler. Weed is no longer an issue. Thank God that the NFL got that right.
Yeah, I think he's going to be fine. I actually could see him going even higher because of that rule change. I think the only reason that they have him down as far as he is because they want to be like, well, character issues. Like, well, no, everybody smokes a little weed. Today's 420, by the way.
It is.
Let's go. Where's Stephen A. Smith when you need him?
Get off
Get
the
off
weed.
the
Stay
weed.
off the damn weed.
He doesn't have to say that anymore. They're allowed to smoke it.
Right now, he's just like he loses a catchphrase.
So that brings us to pick 12, where we get back into a fantasy relevant player. I have Jerry Jeudy going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I think Las Vegas moving to Vegas from Oakland, they're going to want some electricity when it comes to playmakers. And I also think that after investing all that they invested in AB and him never taking a meaningful snap for them,
So crazy.
they're going to want a playmaker that is cheaper and less of a headache to take his spot, whether it's Jeudy, whether it's Lamb, whoever it is.
The wide receivers you're going to see them start flowing in after I'd say pick 6, and it gets crazy.
At pick 12, I have 4 wide receivers going in a row.
Yeah. The receiving class is insane, and it's kind of like 2 years ago quarterback class, where any of those guys kind of could have gone at 1. Any of these receivers that we're about to go through could be the first receiver picked.
I
They're
think
all
it's,
that good.
I think
totally.
I think it's going to determine. I think it's going to depend on what type of receiver that team wants. So I have Jeudy going to the Raiders because he's a big play guy, can play on 3 levels,
physical.
and I think that he's going to immediately bring electricity, which a team that is freshly moving is going to want the splash guy. You're not going to take a move to a brand new city and stay under the radar with your drafting and with your free agency. That brings us to the Niners, who have the 13th pick that they acquired from Indy, who also take a wideout because we saw how much their playmakers lacked in the Super Bowl, and they think they're one piece away all the time. So I have CeeDee Lamb going 13 to the Niners to complement Deebo Samuel, give Garoppolo another target. They have a stable of running backs already. And then I have Philly trading up to get their guy, Justin Jefferson. Big game. He's a big game receiver. He had a huge playoff run, and I think he's exactly what Carson Wentz needs in that offense. And with the run at receivers that everyone's expecting between 11 and the time that Philly's supposed to pick at 21, I don't think they're going to take their chances at waiting for Jefferson to fall.
That would make the most sense for Philly, I think. But also, if Tampa Bay decides to stay, they're taking a lineman right then and there to make sure that they get their guy.
And I think Tampa can trade down and still get their lineman the same way that I have the Browns doing from 10. So with Jefferson going to Philly, I think that's going to immediately help Carson Wentz. I think Jefferson will be one of those wide receivers that starts off a little slower because we don't have the rookie camps, but by the end of the year, he's going to be Wentz's top target. Wentz can sling it.
What is it with Philly receivers? Like, there is no consistency.
Well, they keep on
I mean,
getting
Alshon
hurt.
Jeffrey last year
Look
had
at the
a better
look at the
year,
ones
but-
that they have. They have no one that can stay on the field.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But, imagine if they could have somebody stay healthy. I think that'd be,
I mean,
consistently
D-Jax is
in the,
what, mid-30s now almost?
Yeah, their
yeah,
wide
that was
receiver
dumb.
room.
That was dumb last year.
Their wide receiver room is pretty much empty, which is why Jefferson would be absolutely perfect to
That's
fit
why.
into that room right there. At 15, I have the 4th wide receiver in a row going with Henry Ruggs III.
Tyreek Hill Jr.
Tyreek Hill Jr. can play opposite of Cortland Sutton, and Sutton's their tall go-get-it guy. Ruggs can play underneath. He's fast, get him the ball in space.
And they have a stable of, no pun intended, stable of young wide receivers in Denver. Really, even like they still have Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
They have like 3 guys that started towards the end of last year to peak once they got once all the trades went through. I mean, we already knew about Cortland Sutton, so I think that's going to be a fun team to watch if that's the case. Just because Drew Lock is already entertaining in itself, but him throwing to that many options, I think could be pretty cool. All young, all fast.
Don't forget about Noah Fant too.
And Noah Font, yeah,
Yep.
Font.
So they're going to have a bunch of targets for Drew Lock. There's going to be no reason that Drew Lock should hold back that offense with all that he has to work with. Where would you rank those top 4 wide receivers? In which order would you rank best to worst?
So
And base it on where they land in this draft or where you want them to land. Between Judy, Lamb, Jefferson, and Ruggs, pick any team that you want them to go to and pick your top guy.
okay, so one of them really wouldn't be in my top 4. Or I'm sorry, was it 4 or 5? 4, yeah. So one of them wouldn't be in my top 4.
You picking Higgins instead?
I'm picking Higgins instead.
Okay.
So that's just me, but still, Higgins is 4. And then
But where for your number 1 out of those 4, where do you want him to go for the
Oh.
best fantasy output? Where if you own one of these guys already, if you had your pick and you took him in a rookie draft, where do you want your number 1 guy to go? Between Vegas, San Fran, the Jets, Denver, all of these wide receiver hungry teams, where do you want him to go?
I'm going to go with the Raiders because they need the most help. Thusly, whoever's going there is probably going to get off to the quickest start.
So which one do you want the Raiders to take at 12?
You nailed it, Jerry Judy. I think that's a logical choice for them.
So Judy's going to be your number 1 going to the Raiders.
Yes.
Okay. What about you, Paul?
Personally, I think I can see any of these guys flourishing in Kyle Shanahan's offense in San Francisco. But the number 1 guy for me is Judy all around. I mean, the guy's a freak.
I mean, we're talking about fantasy, right?
Yeah.
Fantasy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I agree that I did think San Fran's offense, but San Fran's offense does not revolve around
There's a lot of mouths to feed.
exactly.
There's a
So
lot of mouths to feed.
and they
there.
do a great job of it, which is why I wouldn't have a lot of stock in any of those receivers. Philly, we have no idea. I think the Broncos, like I said, there's a lot of competition there. So I think the easy answer, if you're talking about those 4 teams, I would say Jared Judy, the Raiders, is the one I would look at.
So then after those 4, I have Thomas going to the Browns, offensive tackle, give them some O-line help.
They need all the old linemen.
Javon Kinlaw going to the Cowboys, helping out their defense.
They need all the defense.
Then I got Josh Jones going to Miami to help out a newly drafted Tua, and which the running back that they'll draft later. And then I have Kalavan Chason.
One more time.
I can't say that. Going to the Raiders, ironically, in the pick that they traded the elite D line, Khalil Mack for. They're going to switch one edge rusher for another there, and then we get to another fantasy relevant player in a surprise pick to Jacksonville, Jordan Love.
That is a surprise because I didn't see him on really any first round boards.
Well, there's a lot that say that he will be a player that a team takes a chance on, and everyone loves his physical assets because they compare him to Patrick Mahomes. So they love his physical aspects, but he regressed so much in his last year playing for Utah State that I think that he is a complete roll of the dice. But with Jacksonville having 2 first-round picks and a bunch of picks after the first round that they can use to maneuver, I think they're going to take a chance and give Gardner Minshew a little competition, which I think they should surround Minshew with talent instead of giving him competition.
I agree. I think they like him too much. I don't see a quarterback coming into Jacksonville this year, especially not a first rounder. My opinion, though. But the reason for that is because Tampa. Now I can't talk. Jacksonville, same trashy area of Florida. Just kidding. But they love Gardner Minshew. I think that he's their guy, and I think they showed that by letting Nick Foles just go for nothing. So I feel like drafting a quarterback in the first round is them showing maybe they're not fully committed, and I don't think that that's what they would want to do right now, especially if it's a flyer.
I think
in the
they
first
do
round.
have a history of wasting picks and not getting value out of picks. So I think they're going to fall in love with the potential of Love. See that? And I think that they're going to, if Love goes there, I think they are going to waste his career. I don't think that they're going to surround him with the talent that he needs. I don't think he's going to develop the way he should. Now, with Love likely to go in the first half of round 1, you have Jacksonville, you have the Raiders, you have the Saints, you have the Patriots, you have the Packers if he wants to sit behind Aaron Rodgers. Where could Love go that he would eventually be a fantasy impact player?
I think you did mention it there. I think the Saints. Kind of that nightmare scenario that I threw out there for Drew Brees owners of if you go fully invested in Drew Brees. I think if they're going to address that need in the first round, the only opportunity they would have to do it is around that pick. If they like the guy, if they love the guy, then I could see him being a very important piece for the Saints in that scenario I threw out earlier where Drew Brees going down, if you don't need to rush him back, they won't.
So after Love, I have Tampa getting some offensive line help in Jackson. I have some defensive players going after that. And then we fall to pick 26. I have the Dolphins at pick 26 picking DeAndre Swift, who's likely to be the first running back off the board. There's a stable of running backs in this draft. I think one of them is going to go round 1. I'm picking Swift at pick 26. So I think that where we come back to that, is Jordan Howard going to cut into the workload of the rookie running back? If Swift gets taken at pick 26 from Miami, how do you feel about him in fantasy?
I mean, like I said before, I'm very wait and see on the Dolphins running back situation. I don't plan on really, going out of my way to pick one of them to start for the season. I think, depending on how things go, either Swift or Howard on waivers at some point in the year, depending on you never have the flow of the offense, injuries, this thing or that thing. But I immediately I don't see much of an impact. But I mean, we'll wait and see. I think that's my approach: is wait and see with the Dolphins' backfield.
I think if Swift gets taken by the Dolphins, he's going to be assumed to be the wide receiver 1. I think he's going to have the same type of draft stock as Miles Sanders did last year when he got taken by Philly. Everyone assumed that Jordan Howard really wouldn't eat into his carries. Jordan Howard ended up being a nuisance for at least the first half of the year. And then I think that Swift is going to be held back a little bit by Howard, but I still think he's going to be a mid-round target as an assumed top running back for the Dolphins.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I completely agree with Christian in the sense that, I get what Paul's saying with, wait to see how it shakes out, but if they're taking him the first round, there's plans. There's an investment right there. He's going to play. So mid-round, I wouldn't shy away from him, but what I would do then, depending on, again, kind of more leaning with what you're saying, I would still take him higher, mid-round, but depending on the depth of the league I'm in, I'm probably taking Howard as a handcuff to see how things shake out after the preseason. You can tell after game 1, and neither of them are going to be my sure thing running back 1. This is using my strategy of drafting as many running backs as possible. So it all depends, like you said, but at the same time, if what you said, Christian, is correct, I mean, that's for sure what I'm doing. I'm handcuffing.
And what I mean, you go into each draft with a plan. Like I said, I'm not going to go out of my way to pick either one of them, but things change in the draft. You plan for one thing, and things go 15 different directions. If I think he's there and it's the right value, then sure, it's one thing. But like I said, I really want nothing to do with that backfield right now.
I would happily roster the Dolphins' rookie starting running back, whether it is Dobbins or if it is Taylor or if it's Swift.
Taylor Swift.
I see what you did there.
That one was easy. But I think all three of those guys could go as the first running back in the draft.
Yeah, whether any of them are taken in round 1 or taken by the Dolphins, I think that the perception is going to be the same, that they're going to be the quote-unquote RB1 of Miami, and I think that everyone's going to assume that Jordan Howard's just going to eat into that production a little bit. The only player that I have left that's fantasy relevant taken in round 1 is at pick 30 to the Green Bay Packers. They have to get Aaron Rodgers some help.
Oh, yeah, a playmaker.
They have to put someone on the outside to take some of the attention away from Devontae Adams.
And it's the guy that I mentioned earlier, who I think might go higher. But either way, this top half of receivers, it's anybody. Anybody can be amazing. But I'll tell you what would give you the automatic edge over all the other guys is fucking Aaron Rodgers throwing you the football.
And the thing with that is 36 years old, it's win now.
Yep. You have to get him a productive playmaker because, frankly, I'm pretty sure that Packers fans and Aaron Rodgers himself are sick of Aaron Rodgers having no one to throw the ball to.
I should call in my boy Tim Kiernan, big Packers fan, and he thinks that they're going to go receiver first.
It's almost a no-brainer at this point that they have to get Aaron Rodgers some help, and at some point, you have to stop trying to fill that gap with third and fourth round guys. They've been trying to fill it with day 2 and day 3 picks where everyone looks at that player like, oh, Green Bay's number 2. Maybe we should take a flyer on him in fantasy
There's
drafts.
5 I can think of off the top
And
of my
they
head.
just don't pan out. So I think it's time that they invest their first round pick in a talent to get the attention away from Adams and to get Aaron Rodgers some help. Now, for the people or for the position players in fantasy that weren't taken in round 1, who are you most excited to see? Whether it be J.K. Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, Zach Moss, or a wide receiver like Denzel Mims or K.J. Hamler, Jalen Reagor, any of those, who are you excited for and where do you want to see them go?
2-part answer.
Okay.
Obviously excited to see what J.K. Dobbins does. I think that, like I said, I think him, Taylor, or Swift could easily be the first running back taken in the draft. But I'd love to see him go somewhere and make an impact right away. The crazy part is there's not a ton of places right now where a running back will go in and immediately be considered. If you think about it, I mean, every team has at least a guy, with the exception of LA, and maybe 2 or 3 other teams.
I could see LA adding a running back. I think that Tampa has to add a running back.
I think they still like the tandem that they have. They both produced enough last year. I'm not saying I'm saying they wouldn't go that high.
Well, they're not going
I'm
to take him in the
guys.
first round, but I think in the second day of drafting, rounds 2 and 3, I think Tampa has to add a running back because Ronald Jones is not the answer. And when you sign a player like Tom Brady, you don't have the time to wait to see if he is the answer.
Yep.
You have to go add a running back talent right now. And if you add an offensive lineman in the first and you add a running back in the second or the third for Tampa, I think that running back is going to steal Ronald Jones' spot, and I think he's going to immediately make an impact. But the position player that I want to see go and where I want to see him go to is Jonathan Taylor, and I want to see him go to the Chiefs. I think that the Chiefs will trade out of round 1 because they only have $400,000 to spend when it comes to the cap. So they trade out of round 1, take a spot in the high 30s of round 2.
And don't forget the Seahawks need a running back.
Well, if Chris Carson's okay. We don't know if his injury is going to carry
They said
on or
his
not.
hip injury was compared to, and this is maybe more of a Cleveland thing, but if you kept up with sports at all, Isaiah Thomas had a hip injury that took him out for almost 2 years' time. Never came back the same. That's basketball, I know, but I'd imagine in football that injury being considerably worse to come back from because of, I mean, it's impact. You're a running back.
Well, they still got Rashad Penny, too. So
Right.
I think any running back that's going to be drafted by the Seahawks, which I do think they'll add one at some point, whether they invest highly in it or not, I think they're going to add one, but I think that they're going to see if Chris Carson's okay first, and I think his recovery is going better than expected. But I think that when the Chiefs trade out, which I have them trading to 36 with the Giants trading back into the first round, grabbing a DB, and when the Chiefs trade out and get to round 2, I think they're going to take either Dobbins or Taylor, and I think that player is going to take over the Chiefs running backs position and could easily be an RB1.
Yeah, I mean, there's like I said, there's not a lot of teams that necessarily need, like right now. If the Chiefs went through this draft and didn't draft a running back, I'm sure that people aren't screaming and going crazy because they have guys that can still get the job done. Now, to improve, yes, that's the goal. But as far as running backs go, I don't think you can look at any of these guys fantasy impact wise. Any of these guys, with the exception of, like I said, 1, 2, maybe 3. You know, whoever goes to LA if they draft one, whoever goes to Jacksonville if Fournette leaves, whoever goes to the Redskins. Yeah, there's some places where, okay, or the Dolphins, you know, if a player gets drafted there, for sure, there's some investment. Let's watch this. But otherwise, I think any other running backs taken, like if the Browns draft any running back, yeah, I mean, that's off the radar. There's no way you're going to see any impact from those kind of players right now.
Not without injury. I think that Swift, Dobbins, and Taylor are the three down running backs that are going to go the first 3 off the board. And I think that if they end up in the right spots, which it's Miami, if it's the Chiefs, and if it's the Bucks, I think they will immediately take over those teams' backfields.
I have a question. Why aren't people higher on Taylor?
I don't know. He killed the combine. He was one of the most dominant college running backs that we've ever seen.
Huge.
And people are still saying that Swift fits better, and they're mocking them in the first. My original draft, I had Tampa taking Taylor in the first round.
Which makes a ton of sense.
It would make a ton of sense because Brady needs help, as we said before. But I think that both Dobbins and Taylor are going to be day 2 picks. And those players might still end up on Tampa, which is why I had Tampa grabbing an O-lineman in their first round pick.
Hey, Chubb was the day 2 pick.
Worked out just fine for us.
Bingo.